Cyril Jacobs, Connections That Count. Build a network that works for you, strengthens your brand, and creates lasting relationships. To my friend Vincent Wilson of New York. Introduction. In the American imagination, networking is often portrayed as a high-energy sprint through crowded rooms, a flurry of business cards exchanged, a performance of charm and ambition. It's the handshake at the conference, the elevator pitch at the mixer, the perfectly timed LinkedIn message. But beneath this surface-level choreography lies a deeper, more enduring truth. Networking is not a tactic. It is a system. And more than that, it is a way of life. This book is not about how to work the room. It is not a manual for mastering small talk or collecting contacts. It is a guide to building a network that reflects who you are, what you value, and where you're going. It is a framework for intentional connection, one that begins with self-awareness and evolves through discipline, empathy, and strategic visibility. Networking, in this view, is not a series of isolated actions. It is a living architecture, a system of relationships that grows and adapts with you. The chapters that follow are built on a simple but powerful premise. Your network is not something you acquire. It is something you design. And like any meaningful design, it begins with understanding the materials you're working with. Your personality, your story, your goals, your rhythms. As the American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." Networking begins with that accomplishment, the decision to be yourself, fully and unapologetically. Your personality is not an obstacle to overcome or a brand to polish. It is the foundation of your network. When you embrace your strengths and acknowledge your limitations, you create space for authentic communication. You stop performing and start connecting. People respond not to perfection, but to presence. They trust those who speak with clarity and openness, not those who hide behind rehearsed lines. In a culture saturated with curated personas and algorithmic engagement, authenticity is not just refreshing, it's magnetic. This book invites you to treat your story as your most valuable asset. Not the polished version you might share in a pitch, but the real one, the one shaped by wins and losses, by moments of clarity and confusion, by the choices that define your path. In American literature, the most compelling characters are not the flawless ones, but the ones who struggle, adapt, and grow. Think of Jay Gatsby's longing, Scout Finch's curiosity, or Holden Caulfield's disillusionment. These stories resonate because they reveal something true. Your story, told with honesty and purpose, has the same power. It builds trust, invites collaboration, and positions you not as a commodity, but as a partner. Visibility in this system is not about chasing attention. It's about being seen by the right people, in the right context, for the right reasons. In today's digital landscape, visibility is earned through consistent, thoughtful engagement. It's the result of sharing insights, contributing to conversations, and showing up in communities that align with your mission. As marketing expert Seth Godin reminds us, people do not buy goods and services. They buy relations, stories, and magic. Your online presence should reflect your values and expertise, not your desire for likes. When you focus on relevance over reach, you build influence that lasts. Empathy is the connective tissue of any meaningful network. Without it, relationships become transactional, shallow, and short-lived. With it, they become resilient, dynamic, and deeply rewarding. Empathy means listening not just to respond, but to understand. It means recognizing the goals, fears, and motivations of others and responding with care and clarity. In the words of Brené Brown, empathy has no script. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message of "you're not alone." When you bring empathy into your networking practice, you stop collecting names and start building bridges. Your personal brand is not a logo or a tagline. It is the sum of signals you send through your actions, your tone, your content, and your reputation. It is how people experience you, remember you, and decide whether to trust you. In the American business world, brand is often treated as a marketing tool, but in the context of networking, it is a relational tool. It helps others understand what you stand for, what you offer, and how you operate. A strong brand doesn't just attract attention, it attracts alignment. It brings the right people to your door, not by accident, but by design. Discipline is what turns intention into impact. Without it, even the most thoughtful networking strategy will collapse under the weight of inconsistency. This book emphasizes the importance of rituals, daily, weekly, monthly, that keep your network alive and evolving. Whether it's setting aside time for outreach, reviewing your progress, or scheduling moments of rest, discipline creates the rhythm that sustains your efforts. As James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, writes, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." Networking is no exception. Systems create stability. Stability creates growth. Balance is not a luxury, it is a necessity. In a culture that glorifies hustle and constant connectivity, the ability to disconnect is a competitive advantage. The most effective networkers are not those who are always online, but those who know when to step back, recharge, and return with clarity. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman emphasizes the role of recovery and performance. Rest is not idleness. It's a strategic reset. This book encourages you to build balance into your networking system, not as an afterthought, but as a core principle. Because the quality of your connections depends on the quality of your attention, and attention requires renewal. Adaptation is the final pillar of this system. The networking landscape is fluid, shaped by new platforms, shifting norms, and evolving expectations. What works today may not work tomorrow. The key is not to chase trends, but to cultivate agility. Keep a journal of your interactions. Reflect on what resonates and what falls flat. Test new approaches, learn from mistakes, and refine your strategy. As psychologist Carol Dweck notes in her work on growth mindset, becoming is better than being. The best networkers are not those who know everything, but those who are willing to learn anything. This book is not a collection of tips. It is a blueprint for transformation. It offers a system that you can adapt to your own goals, personality, and context. It invites you to move from theory to practice, from scattered effort to sustained rhythm, from passive participation to active authorship. Networking becomes a way of life when you integrate reflection with action, discipline with empathy, and visibility with purpose. You are not here to chase popularity. You are here to build something lasting. You're not a guest in someone else's system. You are the architect of your own. And every interaction, every story, every moment of presence is a brick in that structure. Let's begin. Your network is your net worth. Porter Gale. Chapter 1. What's networking today? Rethinking networking. When we hear the word networking, our minds often jump to conference rooms, business cards, and awkward small talk by the coffee table. But in truth, the concept runs much deeper than just making useful connections. Networking is a complex system of relationships that shapes both our personal and professional growth. It's about participating in a human environment where connections are not merely tools for resource exchange, but sources of meaning, support, and development. American sociologist Mark Granovetter, one of the foundational thinkers in the study of social ties, highlighted this in his landmark paper, The Strength of Weak Ties. He noted that weak ties, those acquaintances with whom we don't share deep bonds, are often the very pathways to new information, opportunities, and resources. They stretch our network beyond what's familiar, giving us reach and perspective that strong ties alone can't offer. It's counterintuitive, but research shows that weak ties often act as strategic bridges in social systems. Networking has evolved. Today, it's no longer confined to the corporate world. It's present in friendships, everyday exchanges, and even emotional bonds. We don't enter dialogue solely for deals, but to be understood. This shift demands different skills: empathy, presence, deep listening, and above all, authenticity. The first chapters of this book trace the evolution of networking, from traditional forms rooted in loyalty, proximity, and shared territory, to modern practices built around personal branding, digital footprints, and cultural fluency. We'll explore why understanding your position in a network matters and how that awareness can help you build strong bridges between yourself and the world around you. Traditional forms of communication. Long before LinkedIn, Twitter, or other digital platforms emerged, networking existed in an intuitive, almost ritualistic form. Human connections were first and foremost territorial. You knew those who lived nearby, worked in the same factory, or attended the same temple. In American history, this appeared vividly in local communities, from artisan guilds to religious congregations. A person's network was determined by their position within social strata, professional associations, and ethnic enclaves. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, much of this networking functioned through what sociologists later described as social capital, a concept outlined by Pierre Bourdieu and expanded by Robert Putnam's social capital was not money or direct resources, but a sum of trust, shared obligations, and informal networks that provided access. If you were part of a respected group, people extended trust to you, and that trust translated into support during critical moments. In cities, particularly in immigrant neighborhoods of New York and Chicago, this became a kind of trust economy. Those who shared a pew in church could recommend each other for jobs or co-sign bank loans. This traditional networking carried a distinct strength: predictability. You understood who did what, whom you could rely on, and who was simply from the street. Relationships developed over years, through shared labor, family ties, and alignment in values. The expectations were clear. Bonds were earned, maintained, and felt deeply. But the model wasn't without limitations. Newcomers, especially those outside the dominant circle, struggled to access opportunities. This was especially evident during the 1950s and 60s. Business environments remained closed off, and in order to get in, one needed either family legacy or exceptional sponsorship. Networking was not available to everyone. It was elite. That said, the traditional model wasn't inherently flawed. On the contrary, it provided a strong sense of stability. People knew that once you proved yourself, the relationships would endure. These connections were slow to build, but deep in substance. Dinner conversations, joint participation in community events, and even club memberships in Rotary or Lions clubs helped establish vertical and horizontal ties that lasted for decades. It's important to recognize that the foundation of traditional networking was presence. You couldn't simply write a message, you had to show up. That visibility was both a power and a barrier. In the 2020s, as much of life has shifted online, this model has nearly vanished. But its lessons remain. Trust cannot be bought. Recommendations carry weight, and character reveals itself not through a profile, but through actions. Modern platforms are not a replacement for these traditions, but an extension. That is why this book begins by returning to the origins, reminding the reader that real connection requires more than likes or messages. Digital technologies have radically expanded our communication capabilities, lifting the constraints of geography and social access. Today, one can message someone halfway across the globe and receive a reply in seconds. LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and TikTok are not just tools for self-presentation. They are social stages. On these stages, we construct and perform our image, broadcast our thoughts, showcase our skills and convictions, and enter into contact with others while remaining embedded in virtual space. The advantages of these platforms are numerous. Above all, accessibility. Where personal introductions were once mandatory, now a single click or message suffices. Opportunities have expanded for introverts. There's no need to call, no requirement for physical confidence, only a well-structured message. Algorithms help users discover potentially relevant connections, accelerating dialogue. In American culture, which values initiative and visibility, digital networking has become a democratizing force. Anyone can build a network regardless of origin. Yet alongside those advantages came rarely voiced limitations. Chief among them is interaction overload. The flood of messages, requests, likes, and recommendations creates a saturation effect. Unlike organic conversation, which unfolds through rhythm and mutual response, digital channels often devolve into informational noise. Maintaining connection becomes harder. Dialogue is lost. Context fades. Attention fragments. In addition, digital spaces strip away the physicality of interaction, facial expression, vocal tone, emotional energy. American psychologist Albert Mehrabian underscored in his research that the majority of human influence is carried through nonverbal cues, and these cues disappear in text. Even video calls cannot fully replicate them. This absence contributes to an empathy deficit, makes ambiguity commonplace, and exacerbates social anxiety. People begin to worry whether they've been properly understood. Another dimension is the public nature of every move. Platforms reward self-presentation, which does not always lead to authenticity. In striving to appear professional, intelligent, or charming, many lose touch with their actual self. A phenomenon emerges. The digital brand diverges from the living person. This is particularly striking among young professionals and creatives. The online profile becomes a designed artifact rather than a trace of organic development. Despite its constraints, live communication remains the most potent source of connection. In a personal meeting, we more quickly perceive one another, understand nuance, and adjust intuitively shared experience. Even simple ones, like a walk, a coffee, or a chance exchange at an event, build common memory. These fragments form a foundation for relationships far more resilient than a message thread. This is why real-world interaction continues to be key to building lasting bonds. It's compelling to observe how these two realms, online and offline, intertwine, especially in the age of artificial intelligence. With AI, we gain tools that assist in networking, generating bios, drafting messages, identifying potential contacts, even imitating communication styles. But the question naturally arises, can AI substitute for real dialogue? Most likely not. AI can help initiate, refine, and analyze, but it cannot replace. Networking isn't merely word exchange. It's contact between two systems of experience, two perceptions, two stories. AI can suggest behavior patterns, but it cannot live a moment, feel human motivation, or intuitively recognize tension or enthusiasm. Still, AI provides genuine support to those who struggle with communication, individuals with social anxiety, introverts, or those lacking self-confidence. It can build bridges, shape phrasing, and prompt conversation, a meaningful aid in moving from desire to action. And yet, no matter how advanced technology becomes, networking will remain a human endeavor. It requires time, attention, and emotional presence. Platforms are tools. AI is a guide, but the essence is unchanged. The ability to be with someone, to be near, to listen, to sense, and to remain oneself. Networking was once a ritual of presence, trust woven through shared space, shared labor, and the slow accumulation of mutual respect. The anatomy of modern networking. Today, a person can work remotely, shop for groceries online, earn a university degree from their bedroom, and maintain hundreds of social connections across messaging apps and platforms, all without ever leaving home. This is the new reality in which modern networking is built. But what makes it truly modern isn't just the shape it takes, it's the meaning behind the interaction. In earlier times, connections were often dictated by proximity. You knew who was nearby. Now we choose who to engage with, and that intentionality turns networking from a side effect of life into a learned skill. The internet has rewritten the infrastructure of human connection. What used to be local and face-to-face is now global, fluid, and semi-invisible. You can message a designer in Tel Aviv, an investor in New York, a coach in Buenos Aires, or a copywriter in Manila. Sometimes in the same hour, geography no longer defines reach. Status no longer limits access. Anyone can message anyone. Getting a response is never guaranteed, but the possibility changes everything. This shift brings a crucial distinction. Modern networking isn't built on quantity. Knowing more people isn't the goal. You can have 1,000 LinkedIn connections and still feel isolated, lacking support, trust, or meaningful engagement. In a digital era, quality trumps coverage. Relationships must be curated, not collected. Social platforms, especially professional ones, have evolved from mere directories into stages for personal identity. In American communication culture, where individualism, opinion, and clarity of voice are celebrated, your online presence is a statement. A LinkedIn profile is not just a resume, it's a declaration. Here's who I am, what I offer, and whom I want to connect with. This kind of openness can unlock opportunities even before active outreach begins. Modern networking, then, is less about discovering people and more about being discoverable. The core shift is from searching and grasping to creating presence. Your profile's tone, the thoughts you share, the subjects you engage with. These aren't just branding elements, they become magnets for the right people, especially in the English-speaking world, where content carries weight and public articulation is seen as a sign of maturity and expertise. Perhaps the most noticeable transformation is in the rhythm of interaction, where relationships once matured slowly through joint projects, meetings, and personal acquaintance. Today, connections can ignite within minutes. You might initiate contact with someone you've never met, exchange ideas, align on vision, and be collaborating by next week. What used to take months now takes moments. Velocity has become the norm. But that speed introduces a new challenge: burnout. More connections, less depth. This is especially evident in the US, where the pace of interaction is built into the culture. People are open, ready to talk, but also quick to move on. There's little room for drawn-out conversations without clear purpose. Networking starts to resemble a marketplace. Fast exchanges, virtual handshakes, and forward motion. It's ideal for initial reach, but poor for sustained relationships. On the other hand, the current landscape offers a chance to those previously sidelined. Individuals from small towns, non-elite colleges, and backgrounds without existing access can carve out visibility by using the right platforms. If your ideas are compelling, your style distinct, and your dialogue thoughtful, people will notice. In American circles especially, articulate voices are welcomed. That makes networking more inclusive, less about who you know and more about how you show up. Content-driven networking deserves special attention. What you post, film, or discuss creates a presence far beyond your immediate circle. People read your thoughts, absorb your tone, and form impressions. Some of the strongest connections are sparked not by outreach, but by reaction. The dynamic changes. You're not approaching people, they're coming to you. That said, surface engagement is not the same as a relationship. Likes, comments, reposts may suggest visibility, but without real interaction, they remain low touch. The illusion of connection is one of modern networking's traps. You think you have meaningful reach, but it's often a soft ripple with no follow-through. If you don't know how to convert digital signals into dialogue, you miss the window. Which brings us to one essential skill: beginning conversations from context. Messaging. "Hi, let's connect" rarely works. Instead, referencing a specific post, thought, or angle, like "Your insights on brand growth resonated with my own work," builds bridges. In American norms, this is appreciated. Contextual awareness and thoughtful reference are seen as respect and attention. The real goal is translating digital interest into human exchange. A Zoom call, a voice message, even a well-composed reply can be the moment where Networking shifts from passive presence to active engagement. Modern networking is a transition from digital touchpoints to meaningful participation. Digital tools are part of this ecosystem too. CRM systems, autoresponders, bots all help manage flow. AI is now involved in networking, suggesting whom to message, how to respond, what tone to adopt. These systems bring structure, but there's a caveat. Template-based communication can feel robotic. American readers especially value spontaneity and individual tone. AI can assist, but not replace, human nuance. As networking evolves, hybrid formats will become common. Online meetings leading to offline coffees, and vice versa. People are learning to interact through avatars, AI interfaces, even pre-written scripts. But the core remains unchanged, the desire to be heard and to hear. One emerging complexity is ambiguity of status. In traditional settings, you knew where you stood: student, partner, expert, intern. Online, roles blur. The same person might be an authority in one community and a beginner in another. Flexibility becomes key. Navigating these shifts, adapting to changing expectations, and learning to occupy multiple spaces. Connections have become fragmented. You might have a professional circle for work discussions, a creative group for idea sharing, and a personal sphere with friends and family. These zones now overlap. Your colleague might follow your travel blog on Instagram. A former classmate might comment on your startup launch via LinkedIn. The modern networker must manage these intersections not by isolation, but by showing up authentically in each context. An intriguing pattern is the rise of event-based connection. Increasingly, people meet around themes, shared interests, webinars, conferences, forums after the event. The link fades unless reinforced. To prevent this drop-off, follow-up becomes vital. A short message, a genuine remark, a desire to continue. Relationships need post-event cultivation. Hybrid networking is now standard. Online may be the first handshake, offline the deeper conversation, or the reverse. Especially in business, Zoom calls are often a prelude, and in-person meetings validate intent. But some relationships remain entirely virtual. The challenge is keeping tone human, so that ties don't feel transactional. At its core, modern networking isn't about tech or apps. It's about the capacity to build bridges between real people, diverse, sometimes unfamiliar, and to do so with humanity, despite pace, format, and noise. Modern networking isn't about finding people. It's about making yourself found by the right people. Connection across business, friendship, and everyday life. Networking doesn't live solely in offices or convention centers. It doesn't start with a business breakfast and end after the closing keynote. Instead, it runs through everyday life, from a quick chat with your barista to texting with a friend working in a different field. Networking isn't a separate professional skill. It's a way of being in the world, a mindset that recognizes every interaction as potential for relationships, ideas, collaborations, or unexpected direction. In business, networking is often seen as a strategic tool, a way to find clients, investors, or partners. This is both practical and logical, but in reality, deals don't happen just because they make sense. Collaboration begins when trust surfaces, when people resonate, when there's that unspoken feeling of, we get each other. And that level of connection isn't built through tactics. It comes through presence and authenticity. In American business culture, relationships often start lightly. A conversation at a conference, an exchange on LinkedIn, a brief reaction to a post. Yet if you can pick up on someone's rhythm, respond attentively, keep the dialogue going without forcing it, you're likely to build real rapport. Knowledge may spark interest, but reliability builds trust. And networking here becomes less about outreach and more about compatibility. Even strictly professional relationships can carry the texture of friendship, shared values, shared laughter. A potential client might become someone you talk life with. An old friend may become a co-creator on a project. These boundaries between types of relationships are becoming increasingly fluid. Emotional resonance is no longer separate from professional relevance. What's changing is that collaboration often begins not with a pitch, but with genuine affinity. You want to work with someone because you enjoy talking with them. They're honest, conversational, maybe even funny. They don't oversell, they connect. That's especially crucial in service industries, creative fields, consulting, where networking isn't an external tool, but a living part of your style. Friendship-based networking expresses itself differently. Softer, backgrounded. You don't think my friend is part of my network, but you remember, they know people in that field. Or, her advice helped me through that crossroads. Friends play a quiet yet central role in your ecosystem. They recommend, introduce, support, guide, often more meaningfully than any business contact. In American culture, friendship tends to be reciprocal, but not necessarily deeply rooted. It leans toward active participation, help, advice, shared experience. This isn't emotional distance, it's a different style of connection. Respectful, mutual, and practical. Friendship here is also a kind of resource, a relationship built on openness and a willingness to engage. Even so, friendship still requires presence. If you go silent, remain passive, withhold initiative, your friend won't guess what you want. Networking works when you send signals. I'm here. This matters. I care about staying in touch. These aren't loud gestures. They're quiet but consistent energy. That's what keeps the relationship alive. Everyday interactions, meanwhile, are the most underestimated form of connection. You meet people in stores, on the subway, at events, or in the gym. Each of these small contacts is a potential entry point. A casual conversation might evolve into something deeper. A brief moment of help could leave a lasting impression. The person you share a few words with in line might one day be your collaborator. It sounds accidental, but that's how real networks move, through presence, not planning. These kinds of connections are sometimes called social grease, small interpersonal exchanges that make the environment warmer and more human. A University of Chicago study on urban communication found that individuals with more routine social touches, those light everyday interactions, cope better with stress, find help faster, and feel more embedded in community life. It's proof that even simple exchanges are part of the network. This is particularly visible in American culture. People tend to embrace small talk. It's not superficial, it's an invitation to connect. A phrase like, "How's your day going?" opens the door. If you know how to respond, you're already in a micro contact. It might turn into a real conversation, or it might simply affirm, "I'm not alone. I'm part of this social flow." It's important to recognize that relationships in life aren't simply strong or weak. They form a spectrum. There are acquaintances who could help, colleagues who understand your strengths, people you haven't spoken to in years, but could reach out to. Each one is a thread in the structure you're building. Not a transaction, but a web of intentional presence. Networking isn't a directory. It's not a tool to use people. It's the creation of relationships grounded in trust, attention, and alignment. If you don't offer presence, you won't receive it. If you don't participate, you won't be remembered. This is especially true in everyday contacts. They're fleeting, but they demand subtle attention. The key difference between networking and simply knowing people is intention. You can know hundreds of individuals, but if there's no relationship, it's just static. When you engage, listen, respond, connection takes shape. It might be brief but pointed, or long-term but quiet. It's not about duration, it's about quality of presence. In a world that often treats relationships as resources, it's essential not to turn connection into transaction. This especially applies to business, where it's easy to slip into, "What can you do for me?" mode. But people sense this. They can tell when curiosity is genuine or just strategic. A modern networker learns to bring value before being asked, not as a trade, but as a way of showing up. In friendship, this looks different. Remembering important moments, showing care, sharing something thoughtful. You recall that a friend had a milestone, you reach out. You come across something relevant they care about, you pass it along. These are not favors, they're attentiveness. And in daily life, it's the same. A kind word, helping a stranger, asking a meaningful question, just being polite. All these acts build the network, not for profit, but because that's how community is shaped. The bottom line is clear. Connection isn't limited to category. It lives wherever dialogue lives. Networking isn't a resume section. It's a way of thinking notice people, hear them, show up. In business, it's reliability. In friendship, it's engagement. In everyday life, it's humanity. And once you understand this network, you don't need to build it. You're already in it. Networking isn't reserved for conferences. It's the art of presence in every encounter, from boardroom deals to casual hellos. Harmony between the personal and the professional. Networking is not a stage performance. It's not a spotlight moment, a polished entrance, or a curated role. It's a way of being oneself in the presence of others. And one of the most subtle, yet critical challenges of modern networking is learning to engage in a way where the personal and the professional don't contradict each other. They reinforce each other. This harmony isn't about blending everything into one, but about showing up honestly in conversation, with respect to the context, to others, and to oneself. The breakdown begins when someone treats professional interaction as a theatrical act, speaking in borrowed language, using rehearsed phrases, afraid of seeming too real. That form of communication may appear correct, but it quickly exhausts both sides. There's no resonance, just surface-level formalism. In English-speaking environments especially, being able to remain human while still respectful is considered a sign of maturity. Corporate culture for years emphasized role separation. One version of you at work, another in life. But with the rise of professional communities, creative industries, and hybrid work models, this framework began to crack. People started to realize that the mask doesn't make the dialogue stronger. It weakens it. Genuine contact begins when you allow yourself to show up not just functionally, but with human substance. This isn't about oversharing or turning every meeting into a confessional. Harmony is the art of balance. You can be sincere without being intrusive. You can show warmth without losing focus. You can voice uncertainty without it being seen as weakness, if you remain present and open to exchange. Take a simple real-world moment. Someone speaks about a project, but adds what inspires them about the underlying idea. Suddenly, it's more than business emotional texture emerges, and the story becomes vivid. The listener doesn't just hear information, they sense motivation. This is the bridge between domains. It's what makes communication stick. In American professional spaces, this shows especially during networking at events. People tend to glide between topics: work, favorite podcasts, thoughts about the city where the conference is held. This isn't a distraction. It's a way to create a conversational space where the other person shows up not as a role, but as a whole individual. If you know how to move across this spectrum, you're remembered as someone easygoing, confident, engaging. But harmony isn't just about external tone. It's about internal awareness. You need to feel what you're saying, not just as part of a transaction, but as part of your worldview. When you speak about a project, you're not just reporting, you're sharing values. When you listen, you're not just allocating time, you're offering attention. People who navigate this boundary well don't come across as too personal, but neither do they sound like walking resumes. They're able to give context without excess intimacy, show interest without pressure, speak clearly without being cold. This style of communication isn't innate, it's trainable. It depends on observation, reflection, and a willingness to adjust if something feels off. There's often a fear. What if my vulnerability is seen as weakness? but it's about how you present it. Saying, I'm learning, I'm experimenting, I don't know everything, is not weak. It's strong. It shows that you recognize the dynamics of your journey. People trust those who don't pretend to be perfect. Especially in professional settings, respect is built on honesty as much as accomplishment. Another nuance is knowing how to separate voice from noise. In today's oversaturated environment, filled with posts, content, and passing opinions, there's a temptation to speak like everyone else, to copy trends, use templates, write what the algorithm favors. And that's where individual tone gets lost. Networking turns into marketing, and with it, authentic resonance fades. Finding your style, how you speak, how you show up, how you connect, becomes essential. Harmony between the personal and professional is not just about balance. It's about architectural sensibility and dialogue. Knowing what kind of input fits in the moment, when to be precise, when to be warm, when to dial in, when to ease tension. This skill is like musical intuition in conversation. You hear tone, rhythm, and you play without false notes. Emotional hygiene matters here too. If you keep opening up without receiving a response, you'll feel depleted. If you're constantly asked to contribute but never supported, you'll feel friction. Harmony includes boundaries. The ability to say, I'm not available right now. Let's reschedule. I need a pause. That's not selfishness. That's protection from burnout. One of the clearest ways to protect this harmony is by asking yourself a simple post-conversation question. Did I remain myself? If you find you spoke in someone else's tone, censored your thoughts, or didn't express ideas, that means the balance was lost. It's okay. You recalibrate, reframe the exchange, return to center. That's awareness. And there's a myth that emotion doesn't belong in the professional realm. But the truth is, emotion signals depth. A person who communicates not only through facts but also through tone creates response in business emails, oral presentations, even brief LinkedIn messages. Emotion shows that you're not just offering, you're feeling. That's what makes contact live. Yeah, that's why networking today is not merely communication, it's social navigation. You move across meanings, formats, and contexts, remaining yourself, adapting to others, but never dissolving. That makes you grounded. That makes connection durable. In Brené Brown's book, Dare to Lead, one line stands out: clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Transparency and honesty are a form of care. They create safety. And if you can speak with clarity and respect, you build space for a dialogue that can evolve. That is real harmony. The harmony between personal and professional is more than aesthetic. It's psychological. It's the space where trust forms. And without trust, there are no networks, no introductions, no resilience. People show up when they feel seen and heard. They stay when they sense the conversation can continue. Harmony isn't about splitting roles. It's about showing up whole with respect, presence, and emotional clarity. Practice. You can write your answers down or simply reflect on the following questions. Do you think the goals of human communication today differ from those of the previous century? What advantages do modern communication tools and platforms offer for networking,